I'm Mary Davis along with Sully, but I do want you to meet Michele Ryan. Michele, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Wonderful to be here today.
Well, we are going to talk about your son, who came to Children's when he was 17 years old.
Yes.
Can you tell me how that came about and how he ended up here?
Well, it was really kind of rough timing because he had just, like the Friday before, finished up his junior year of high school and was looking forward to a real fun summer, you know, maybe getting a job, hanging out with his friends and everything. So that next Tuesday, he goes out with his friends to one of these, you know, like hot wings places. And of course, you know, they always want to eat it, you know, like where your lips are burning and stuff like that. So the next day, he's complaining of stomach ailment. And I'm like, well, of course, it was probably the wings.
Right.
As the day progressed, it got worse, and finally, like right after dinner time, I mean, we knew he was in really, really rough shape. So my husband actually took him, you know, to the hospital, and, you know, they were trying to figure out what was going on. You know, was it an appendix, or, you know, what was happening? It was more than just your run-of-the-mill, you know, those spicy wings gave me indigestion type of thing. So it was kind of a long night, and I kept waiting to hear from him and waiting to hear and everything. Finally, like, I don't know, it was about 4 a.m, I finally, you know, came to the hospital and everything. And his intestinal system was in such rough shape. I mean, they probably, I don't know, he was maybe stabilized for like a week before they even knew what was going on and what they could diagnose.
And you as a mother are panicking
It
at this
is.
point.
I mean, yeah, it's your kid, you know, and you know, I had many, many years ago, my daughter, who's soon to be 25, was here when she was a year and a half old, and had double hernia surgery. And again, it's frightening, you know, no matter whether they're little. I mean, you know, and he was a, you know, big, you know, 17 years old. He was, you know, a big tough kid, and it's your child, and it was frightening. And especially, I think the worst part was like not knowing what was going on. I mean, they couldn't even tell us. They go, well, it's not appendix, but and so it was, you know, it was a rough, you know, it was a good, you know, week. He was, you know, like hooked up to all the IVs, and they were doing things, and eventually was diagnosed with Crohn's disease.
Which is very, very serious. And thankfully, this condition is getting a lot more coverage because it really can take over. It does take over your system, and it does change your life tremendously. And it is also important to mention that your son was 17 years old, and Children's cares for kids up to 21 years old.
Right.
So that must have been a relief to know you could come here.
It really was. And, you know, it was crazy, too, because as a parent, there is obviously, you know, we thought, well, you know, what could we have done? What, you know, if there was anything ahead of time? I mean, he would have, you know, occasional stomach aches. But again, I blame the spicy hot wings, you know.
Sure. And who wouldn't? What mother wouldn't?
And so there was nothing enough even to give, you know, a pediatrician a red flag to say, hey, wow, maybe we've got something going on. And I think the thing that was most consoling was when we finally realized that he had to go into surgery, which was, again, scary. But he said, I don't care. They can do anything to me. I just want to feel better. But the surgeon even said that in many cases, especially with kids, it's not diagnosed until it's in an acute stage. And, you know, it was a rough time. He had his surgery, and, you know, thankfully is doing well, you know, with it being a chronic disease.
How old is he now?
He's 20 years old.
Okay, so but now, and one thing to keep in mind, we are keeping these phone lines open at 404-785-5000. We're on with Michele talking about her son, John. So he now has Crohn's disease, so this is a forever thing.
Right, this is a chronic disease. I mean, there is no cure. There is no real cause. It's considered an autoimmune disease. So there was, you know, it wasn't like, well, what did we do? You know, was it, you know, a certain food or something like that? So it's not like there was even a cause. There's not a cure. He manages it through, you know, some dietary restrictions. He's on, you know, oral medication for it, and is actually managing it super well. I think the thing that really came out with all of this and this experience was that, you know, just a real positive attitude and a wicked sense of humor. is really what got us through this. I mean, because like his friends, you look at it, I mean, it was before his senior year of high school, and, you know, all his buddies could have been like, hey, I'm going to Whitewater, or picking up chicks, or, you know, just doing whatever. They could have been doing anything. And those guys, those core group of friends of his, they were at the hospital like every day. I think they watched like the entire, however many, you know, seasons of Family Guy there were. And, you know, I mean, it's funny too, because of course with, you know, he ended up with the surgery, he had like 13 stitches in his abdomen, and they would always be like, well, don't laugh too hard, you know, you'll bust a gut and everything like that. So really what got us through it was just, you know, well, besides that, the positive attitude and everything else. But, you know, we really can't say enough about the care that we received when we were here. I mean, we were here for a total of 6 weeks. He had the surgery, went home, had a complication, came back again. You know, this is kind of like the last place we really wanted to be, but the way that we felt like it really was our home away from home. And not just for our son, but for us. I mean, all the nurses would come around and they were like, oh, well, you know, how's mom doing? Do you need anything? And just the level of care, not only just medically knowing that he was in excellent hands and that he was going to be, you know, treated for, you know, by the doctors and nurses, but just the compassion and the care. And, you know, and again, going back to the sense of humor, because once he was like up and about and everything, of course he had the hospital gown, and he was like, yeah, could you bring some basketball shorts? Because little kids really don't need to be, you know, seeing this and all. And it was cool because he would eventually, he had his little IV cart, and he was, you know, I mean, he had abdominal surgery, and it was, you know, obviously a, you know, a tough time and all, but when he started, you know, doing the little walkabouts, and we'd kind of go down the hall, and the nurses, like, they started cheering for us like it was like NASCAR. They're like, come on, John, you can beat your mind, come on, one more lap, you know. And it was like, it was so cool. But the day, and we both, you know, we both remember this. I had mentioned in the story that I sent, which, you know, thank you so much for including it, like, on your website and
oh, well, you know what? I mean, listen, this is something that could happen to anybody. Do you have a history of Crohn's in your family?
You know, we don't, but apparently it is something that can be, you know, something that is, you know, just sort of like any other thing. You know, you can have a you know, a predisposition for it and everything.
It's a serious thing. It really, I mean, that is and for a 17-year-old boy.
And it was tough, you know, I mean, because he was, he had been playing hockey since like the 3rd grade, so he didn't even get to play his senior year of ice hockey at Walton High School. And it was really rough. You know, there were a lot of things that, you know, that he learned through managing the disease.
And learned about it here, which is what's so important at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I mean, that's what's really bringing it all home.
Oh, it is.
And that's what drove you to come in here today. And thank you so much for that, Michele.
Okay.
Telling your story and being so open about that. And we are getting those phones ringing, 404-785-5000. John is now 20 years old.
He's doing awesome. You know, we've again, and he ended up, actually his junior year of college, wrote a very extensive research paper about Crohn's, and one of the things that he mentioned, I was really surprised the level of detail. I mean, he described the fish that were in the fish tank that made him feel better, you know, and he remembered a lot of things about his time here, and was truly very grateful and thankful for the care that he received at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta.
And that's why we're all here today. So again, on the phones, 404-785-5000. Thanks for sharing your story today.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
Nice to meet you too. It's our big show for little voices on 92.9 Dave FM.